So welcome, and we're delighted to have you as our conversation partners for our Faith in the Parish project and episode 3. I wonder if you could just give a brief introduction to yourself and your current role. So could we start with Julia, please?
Yes, of course. So I'm Julia Burton-Jones, and I have a dual role in developing chaplaincy for older people, specifically Anna chaplaincy. So it began with a project in Rochester Diocese, focusing on the experience of dementia and the need for better spiritual care for those affected. And then my role was extended also to cover Canterbury Diocese. And then in 2020, I took on a new role with BRF, Bible Reading Fellowship, which is the national home of Anna chaplaincy, while continuing to work part-time in the two dioceses. So I'm sort of spanning Kent and the national Anna chaplaincy project.
Oh, thank you, Julia, and we're so grateful to you for bringing a chaplaincy perspective to our conversation today. So if I could move it on to Javaid from Sheffield.
Thank you, Gail. My name is Javaid Iqbal. Presently, I'm serving as the Archdeacon of Doncaster in the Diocese of Sheffield. I have been in this role for about nearly 2 years now, or just over 2 years. My role alongside the Archdeacon's responsibilities also has the portfolio of the chaplaincy, the sector ministry, and the chair of Board of Faith and Justice, as well as being the lead for well-being in the diocese.
That's fantastic, Archdeacon Javaid. Thank you for that. So you'll bring a very broad perspective from a number of different contexts for us. Thank you. And Bishop Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yes, of course. Gail, I'm Andrew Rumsey, Bishop of Ramsbury, which is the northern half of the Diocese of Salisbury. Academic research has gone alongside local ministry and has grown out of local ministry. So I've written particularly around the theology of place. So this evening's theme is very pertinent to the things that I love and care about, and my doctoral research into the question, what kind of place is the Anglican parish? Eventually got rewritten as the book Parish and Anglican Theology of Place. So that's my particular kind of hobby horse.
Thank you, Bishop Andrew. And I guess, Becky, we'll just introduce ourselves as facilitators of this conversation. So would you just like to say a brief word?
Yes, of course. So I'm Becky Stevens, a vicar in the Birmingham Diocese, and very glad to be here with you all today.
And I'm Gail Phillip, and I'm a parish priest in a parish in Coventry, which is very near to where I was born. So very interested in that connection of place, and having gone far afield and then returned to my roots and being rooted here as a parish priest. So thank you, and over to you, I think, Becky.
Yes, thank you. So I'm really excited to see what's coming on. So if I just set the scene, in that this is the 3rd episode in a series of 6, which are called Faith in the Parish. And we're seeking to inform a conversation around reimagining the parish. And in order to get a range of views, we've recently approached General Synod members, asking them to complete an anonymous questionnaire. And much of today's content of our conversation will be formed by some of those responses in the questions that we pose to you. And you'll often hear a quote that we've drawn from that survey. So in this episode, we're focusing particularly on the cure of souls. And with your wisdom and insights this evening, we hope to explore the centrality of place, as we've just been talking about, which is embodied by the parish, and to consider to what extent the parish system is essential for the ministry of the cure of souls. We might have a think about how the cure of souls is outlined in canon law and what that means in practice, but we'd also like to have a focus on what that model might look like beyond the boundaries of the parish. So essentially our conversation might examine whether a recovery of the primacy of this call to the cure of souls might be instrumental in revitalising and reimagining our parish. So with the cure of souls as the centre of this conversation right now, I'd like to just invite you to all talk briefly about your understanding of and interest in the cure of souls. And I think we're going to be starting with Julia, if that's okay.
Sorry, just unmuting myself. In taking on the cure of souls at ordination, priests are committing to the spiritual well-being of everyone in the parishes in which they'll serve. With the help of their congregations, they will seek the spiritual, moral and material well-being of each person and look to reconcile individuals with God and with one another. So it's about the role of messenger, steward, guide, teller of the story of God's love. And all of this is described in the ordination service. They are to baptize, preside at the Lord's table, lead worship, teach the scriptures, help people walk in the way of Christ by nurturing them in the faith. They are to bless the people, support the weak, minister to the sick, and prepare the dying for their death. And also they are to foster the gifts of all God's people. So my interest in the cure of souls stems from the recognition that some souls are less visible than others and can be neglected if we don't make a conscious effort to remember them. Among these unseen souls are frail older people, many housebound or living in care settings. And by appealing to the cure of souls, I hope to convince church leadership teams to respond to the distinctive spiritual needs among those living with frailty or cognitive decline. And these include the need for help in walking the way of Christ, being nurtured in the faith, being blessed and sharing in the sacrament. Sadly, I heard recently of a comment made by a church leader to a chaplain planning to visit a person with dementia. Well, what would be the point of that? In coming alongside a person with dementia, we read in the parable of the sheep and the goats, who are coming alongside Jesus himself, are each made in the image of God. The cure of souls applies to every person, regardless of where they live and their ability to engage intellectually or respond actively to what we offer. And care homes are communities within a parish where people live and work, and where we can support the weak, minister to the sick, and prepare the dying for their death.
Thank you so much, Julia. Can I hand over to Archdeacon Javaid so that you could give your summary of what you think, please?
Me, the most solemn moment of clergy licensing and installation service is when I receive the license and hear these words: receive this cure of souls, which is both yours and mine. We as clergy will need to exercise this cure of soul as never before nowadays and in the years to come. Sharing that with the lay people, ministers, and the people in our congregation. The cure of souls we are given as a parish priest, of course, is for the whole parish and the benefice. The term cure means more than care for me. It is an holistic approach to the ordained ministry in the parish. Archbishop William Temple said, "The church is the only society that exists for the benefit of those who are not its members." And the Church of England believes that we are Christian presence in every community, and we pride ourselves on being present in every community. So the cure of souls is for all living in the geographical area of any particular parish, not only for the members of the church.
Thank you, Archdeacon Javaid. Thank you very much. Bishop Andrew, could I ask you to respond next, please?
Yes, by all means. I think the first thing to say is that I love the phrase cure of souls. It's one of my favorite phrases in church life, and I think it's what drew me into local ministry, ordained ministry, even before I knew of the phrase. I grew up in a rectory. I saw that in operation, and it's that which I wanted. I felt called to. I love the word soul particularly. I think because it's a leveling word, which doesn't distinguish actually between the believer and the non-believer. Everybody has one. And I think it's a particularly appealing word that I use it a lot when I'm speaking with non-church people, even more than spirituality. Actually, I think soul and related words are really important at the moment, because to consider what's good for your soul and how you cultivate the life of the soul, not just as individuals, of course, but and this is where the phrase comes into its own, as a community, and moreover as the soul of a place, because places are formed by the way in which we live together. So the cure of souls is a profound, just as others have said, deeply meaningful and resonant phrase, and therefore one that must be retained. And I think it's good also. What can I say? A couple of things, I think. Firstly, that it's not just something which denotes what the church congregation does or gives to those who do not gather or confess Christ. And there can be a tendency in congregational Christianity to consider, particularly you see it in church mission statements, as the gospel is something that we have which you do not, and we will give to you. We are here to give this to you. Now, there's a good sense in which that's absolutely true. The body of Christ locally is called to bear witness to the truth of the gospel, and it's a truth that only the body of Christ embodies in the way that it does. But when we start thinking about the kingdom of heaven, we also realize that the cure of souls says something not about just what those who don't go to church receive from the church, but it says something about where the kingdom is to be found, which is always in Christian teaching, in the self-offering of one for another in love and service of God. So in the love of neighbor, the love of God is worked out. And it is, just as in all missionary encounter, it is the supposed giver of the charity or the care or the cure, who is shaped and formed, challenged, blessed actually by the care that they give. So there's a great reciprocity to the cure of souls, which I learned. I kind of knew intuitively, but I learned it particularly in funeral ministry, which was the one aspect of local ministry I was most fearful. Without saying too much personally, my father had modelled to me local cure of souls, and he died just before I was ordained. I was dreading going in. This is a long time ago. Dreading doing that bit of ministry because it felt too raw. But it very quickly became the thing where I learned how the church itself is shaped when it pours itself out for the community. And it's deeply good for the church to have a cure of souls, because we find that we are shaped, and as I say, challenged, renewed by the kingdom of God growing outside the life of the congregation. I could say much more, as you probably gather, but that'll do for now.
Thank you. That's great. And obviously, there's more opportunity to say more. It's really exciting just to hear all of these initial thoughts. So thank you.
And Bishop Andrew, in fact, I'm going to give you a little bit of opportunity to expand here. You mentioned just now that souls are very much formed by place, and of course you've written extensively about the centrality of place, the link between context and community as being a real strength of the parish system. One comment from our General Synod survey was that the cure of souls is not often spoken about, but the idea that the church prays for and is there for everyone in a particular area, and that the whole of England is cared for in this way, is, this person felt, the strength of the parish. I wonder if you could give your thoughts on that, and whether you see potential for the cure of souls as a means of revitalising the parish in some way.
Yes, I do, and I agree with that statement, that comment about the prayerful undergirding of the cure of souls. It is it's a deeply Christian and moreover Christological thing, because we are seeking in the kingdom of heaven, we are seeking the renewal of all things and all places. So the good news of Pentecost, of course, is that the Holy Spirit is poured out on all places and peoples, and thereafter, what happened in a particular way in the Holy Land is now, and in the focused in the person of Jesus, is now present everywhere. The possibility of that same encounter with Christ by the Spirit is possible in every single place, however unpromising the land might be. And therefore that underwrites the life of the local church, and means that the church simply cannot be the church unless it has a field of neighborhood or neighborly relations. And this is true where chaplaincy is helps us to realize this as well. It cannot be the church without that field of neighborly relations in which we remember and are trained in the life of the kingdom being the renewal of creation, not about the cultivation of a colony of the elect. Those who are elect in Christ are only, I think, properly understood. The doctrine of election is about the cascading down of that ever widening circle of God's blessing, so that the whole of the earth may be filled with the glory of God as the waters cover the sea. So I think there is something really profoundly biblical, Christological, as I say, about the cure of souls. And therefore, of course, that is the key to our renewal. Anything that is close to Christ is going to be key for the renewal of the form and structure of the church. I'm not keen on doggedly or defensively sticking to church structures just because they are inherited, but where they are close to and grow from the person and work of Christ, then absolutely. And I do think that the cure of souls is, as I kind of hinted in the last comment that I made, keeps the church from becoming a stagnant pond and much more like a river of life, if you see what I mean, because it's constantly renewing and challenging us with the life beyond itself. I've always found the life of the congregation, if it becomes too tightly bounded, to very quickly become stifling and can become stagnant. I think it becomes self-referential. It becomes like those sorts of what's the phrase when on social media you just hear echo chamber, it becomes like that. And so the cure of souls is the spring really for the renewal of the local church, I suggest.
I'm just in fact calling to mind a conversation that we had as a project group early on in our planning for this, and I think one of the members spoke about how our engagement with those who are outside of the church and the cure of souls in that aspect might actually become the cure of souls for the church, and I thought that was a really insightful and interesting comment to make. Yeah. Becky, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And actually, this follows on actually as we're talking about reimagining the parish. As I go to Archdeacon Javaid, one of the comments that came out of the survey was that the incumbent shares in the cure of souls with the bishop, and there is a calling to be the priest of the parish and not a chaplain to the congregation. And indeed, you alluded to that when you spoke of the cure of souls a moment ago. I wonder if you could reflect on this comment in light of your experience of reimagining parish ministry in the Diocese of Sheffield with the creation of ministry areas and oversight ministers.
Thank you, Becky. Cure of souls is how it is exercised varies hugely, depending on the local leadership and according to the personal preferences of the clergy and the tradition of the church and so on. Firstly, it could be exercised personally by the incumbent, which is more kind of a sacramental ministry, which is not only challenging, but exhausting for the clergy if we try to do it all ourselves single-handedly. Secondly, it could be delegated to other members of the team, just as a bishop has the cure of souls for the whole diocese or for their own episcopal area if they are suffragan or area bishops. But of course, they can't effectively offer that cure of souls in person to everyone. So they share and delegate to the incumbent. And in turn, the incumbent share it with the congregation and all the baptized people of God. So this way of offering cure of souls, we in the Diocese of Sheffield are calling oversight. In the same way, bishop has the oversight, the parish priest has the oversight within the parish or within the mission area where there are more than one parishes coming together to work in this particular way. We know that this is not the first time, and Church of England hasn't invented that. It's been around since the time of Christ and then of course, the disciples. Christ himself sent 12 and 72 to do his work. He delegated them who went out into the communities and wherever Jesus sent them. And similarly, when we come to the disciples, at one point, the disciples, we read in Acts 6, appointed people for a particular work to look after the Greek widows because they wanted to devote themselves to a particular ministry of teaching and preaching. So this is not a new concept. This concept's been there as long as the church has been there. And so what we are trying to do here in the Diocese of Sheffield, in the same way, trying to develop this, because we realized that with the reduced financial resources and the clergy numbers, our parish priests were not able to effectively provide cure of souls to everyone without exhausting themselves. And one of the things which we picked up, which was actually before my time here in this diocese, that the clergy were exhausted and the people were exhausted. So we trying to find a way around that. So for us, the alternative was to use the model that is more effective in providing the cure of souls and which helps the mission of the church to make the parish ministry sustainable and make the Church of God grow.
Thank you. That was really really interesting to hear the outworkings of how it's going in Sheffield at the moment. And I know many dioceses up and down England are going in a very similar direction. And as a parish priest myself, the lack of exhaustion would be very welcome.
Thank you. So, Julia, if I could turn to you now, and some of our survey comments reflected the strength of the parish as being its witness to incarnational theology, encompassing all people who live within it, revealing the outward focus of the church community. I wonder, how would you respond to that from a chaplaincy perspective, where you're not necessarily rooted in a parish context, but arguably you are very, very involved in the cure of souls?
Yes, thank you. So obviously chaplaincy takes lots of different forms, and a chaplaincy has its distinctive attributes. But I think in offering incarnational ministry, what chaplains are seeking to do is really immerse themselves in the community where they're serving and become Jesus to that community, really seeking to embody the love of God in the way they are with people. And the chaplains are slightly different from other chaplains in that they are explicitly rooted in the parish. They are sent out on behalf of the church, prayed for and supported by the congregation, and obviously accountable to the church family. So they're very much rooted in the parish, but that's not the case for all chaplains. And we work closely with chaplains in other contexts. And in Kent, we hold joint learning events, and we speak to our chaplaincy colleagues in different settings. And they might be located in a different structure rather than the local parish. But I would make the case that all chaplains need to feel supported by the local church as representatives of the body of Christ in their locality. I believe that chaplaincy is really the front line of ministry in an increasingly secular society, and that we need to value school chaplains, prison chaplains, hospital chaplains, sports chaplains, and the many others who fulfill vital roles in offering spiritual care to those of all faiths and none. We should recognise the role that they have. We should support them in it. They're often quite invisible in church life, and yet they are going on our behalf, aren't they, into the context where they are serving. And we can acknowledge and value their unique role. We can pray regularly for them in practicing their ministry in our parish. We can find out about the contexts where they are serving and invite them to make us more aware of the needs that they encounter, and so to enable us to fulfill more effectively the cure of souls. They can be a really vital source of information about what's going on in the context where they are practicing their cure of souls. And also we can work closely with them in welcoming individuals who, through the chaplain's work, would like to be part of a worshipping community. So we work with them in making sure that nobody is neglected. And we are doing a piece of work at the moment in a chaplaincy, which has just been funded for a pilot project in Cumbria, where we're looking at the links between hospital chaplaincy and community-based Anna chaplaincy to make sure that nobody falls through the net of spiritual care, that those who engage with hospital chaplaincy are then supported with spiritual care when they return to their own homes, or perhaps they go into a care home when they're discharged from hospital. And one of the things I would say is that this incarnational ministry can be lonely and costly work. It's not easy work. And to feel the loving embrace of the church family can be deeply encouraging for chaplains. So I would make the case for really embedding chaplaincy in our mission in parish life and supporting those who are going out on behalf of the church to reach people who would never darken the doors of a church, but who have souls and who have spiritual needs. So yes, I think the separation between chaplaincy and parish ministry is a false one, and that we're all engaged in the cure of souls, and we need to work together to identify the community's needs. They're a terrific source of intelligence about what their local community is experiencing, and they work in a very different way to parish clergy, but they work in a way that enables them to be alongside people by seeking permission and gaining trust with individuals who might be quite sceptical and negative about formal structures of church life.
I'm really interested in what you've said there, Julia, because as a parish priest, one of the really positive outcomes and experiences for me from the pandemic experience was actually building much closer relationships with our hospital chaplains, and being so grateful in that period of time that they were able to go to places where I as a parish priest couldn't go for the cure of souls. So thank you for that. Over to you again, Becky.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, such rich variety of understandings, but actually yet holding on to the same notion of the preciousness of the cure of souls. I wonder if we could make this now a little bit more of a conversation in responding to one another. If you'd like to comment, just please do.
Could I pitch in and ask Javaid? I'm interested in what you were saying about the oversight ministry and ministry areas. And would I be right in thinking, Javaid, that it does not replace the parish, that parishes still exist within that scheme? And B, does it nevertheless afford a greater specialization or specializing of particular ministries, particularly for stipendiary incumbents? Does it allow ordained clergy a greater specialization? Am I correct in understanding you right?
Yes, firstly, about the parish itself, the parish remains, that is the basic unit. So the parish remains, we're not changing the parishes, but we're grouping some of the parishes together to make to create what we call mission areas. Yeah, perhaps you're alluding to management more. That might be one area to develop, but it does not force clergy to change their ministry in the way. If somebody is more pastoral, they might have somebody in their focal ministry or another oversight minister who is helping with the more management side. And if somebody is more management side, they might need somebody to come and do pioneer work for them. So it's creating complementary gifts together, so they can be a team which has the gifts needed and required for providing the cure of souls and ministry and mission in any given mission area. I hope that makes sense.
It really does. Thank you. That's clarifies it very helpfully. And so it could be that takes place, but it's not prescribed that there's a particular way of doing it. It's to be locally negotiated.
It is.
We look to the goodwill of parishes to encourage people from a neighbouring parish to come and share some of that responsibility. So, but occasionally people can be a bit protective of their parish boundaries, and they don't like the idea of somebody who has a specialist ministry with older people coming from a neighbouring parish. But we need to be sensible, don't we, and share in terms of the skills and the resources that we have between parishes, and to recognise a calling that somebody has to older people's ministry, whereas for other people it's not their vocation. So I think we have to be, I think the mission areas is a good way of overcoming some of that clustering of provision for older people, or indeed you could have lots of schools in your parish, but you know, so that the resources are evenly distributed and needs are met across a town or a local area.
Thinking about how each of your reflections focus a little bit on pushing the boundaries of the parish. So place is really important, but actually place, although it's legally bounded by the parish boundary, there's that sending. And I think that's what I was hearing from you, Julia, actually, that what I found really powerful was actually you are, as chaplains, you are sent to do that work from that parish church, And I think that's a really helpful model. Actually, it helps us to see that the cure of souls actually flows out, in your words, Bishop Andrew, you know, that kind of the river flowing. I think that's a really beautiful analogy, actually.
And I feel strongly that sector ministries of different kinds, chaplaincies, pioneering ministries, do not need not threaten a vital parish ministry. In fact, they can be the key to its revitalizing. And they aren't. It's actually been a key way in which the parish has remained for 1,000 years, because it has always actually had, whether it's guilds or different forms of mission work, that work in a slightly more pioneering way, but linked to the local, a defined local community, and I do think that that's key to its renewal in our day. What I'm reluctant to see is replacement of the parish, or a drying up of funding to the parish because of new, apparently more dynamic ways of conceiving it. I think that the parish ministry is inherently dynamic, and it can include all that we've been speaking around this evening. But as has been said, you know, Julia was commenting about the way in which we can be parochial in a wrong sense, in a sort of defensive sense about boundary and the possession of the land. And one of the things that chaplaincy, pioneering, etc., do is help parishes to be more fully parochial in the original sense of the word, as the community for non-belongers, you know, the paroikos, those who live outside the walls. They aren't, the parishioners aren't actually, in the original meaning of the phrase, those who are tightly bound and the insiders. They're the local outsiders. And one of the challenges in deployment at the moment is that how do we reach those that traditional inherited parish ministries simply aren't reaching? They could be they're elderly, they could be any age or group, professional group, whatever, but that we aren't reaching. They are souls to cure and care for, but we aren't able to do so very often. And so we can become more fully parochial in a radical sense.
So I wonder, we're just coming to a sort of a conclusion of our time now. Could you each sum up in one sentence what your hopes would be for the future of the ministry of the Cure of Souls? Maybe we could start with you, Julia.
Yeah, my hope is that the Church of England continues to embrace and include all people, regardless of their age, needs and circumstances, in seeking the well-being of communities. And I think the parish system and the Cure of Souls provides a way for us to ensure that all are remembered, none are forgotten.
Thank you. All are remembered, none are forgotten. That's really helpful. Bishop Andrew.
Yeah, I'm drawn to Psalm 1 as we talk, and my hope and prayer is that the Cure of Souls would continue to be a stream that renews the trees of the local church, and enable it to yield its fruit in due season, so that its leaves do not wither.
Thank you. And Archdeacon Javaid.
Yes, my hope and prayer is that the church continues to be for all, and the church truly becomes lively, diverse, and Christ-like.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a really fruitful conversation, and so much difference in what you offer, yet a real hope that actually this continues to be something to offer for all. And Bishop Andrew, I think that's a really, really beautiful analogy, and one that I'm going to take into my own ministry. I've been inspired by all of your conversations, as I'm sure you have, Gail, and we thank you so much for your time.
Bless you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.